All right, sorry about that, everybody. Kind of annoying, but we're just going to give another minute for people to join. All right. Let me share my screen. All right. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Nod your heads if you can. Thank you. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Let me just. Okay, thank you. Everybody is coming back slowly. Let me see if there's, okay. I think we're good. All right, everybody. So we left off with the action team. So now we want to kind of launch into, again, just making sure that those of you who have not, again, had a chance to even listen to our informational webinar or participate in one of our trainings, just thinking about sort of our criteria for involvement. We don't want to be a disaster organization. We're not looking to do that. There are way too many disasters for us to get involved in or have the resources for. But what we are looking to do is really match up our disaster response capabilities and supporting our mission, which is to save them all, right? And end the needless killing of animals in shelters. So we've set up criteria that basically looks like this. So if a disaster were to occur in any of our Best Friends life-saving centers, and by now I'm hoping that you all know where we have life-saving centers, and if you don't, there's a list right here on the slide. Atlanta, Salt Lake, LA, New York City, Houston, and Bentonville, Arkansas. So those are sort of our areas of focus. Also, if the disaster occurs in an area where we have a network partner or we're running a program like a mentorship program or a community cat program, or we have somebody from Best Friends that's embedded in a shelter to help turn that shelter around into a no-kill shelter. So we're really focused on trying to continue our ability to help support that area and that community. Or if the disaster occurs in any of our top targeted at-risk states or communities that are potentially continually impacted by disasters. We know that there are some counties in North Carolina and South Carolina and Atlanta or in Georgia that continually get flooded every time there's a coastal storm or a hurricane that comes up the southeast coast. So we want to make sure that we're focused on our attention on how to best support them, and really look at those as the trigger points to us even considering a deployment during a disaster. So to kind of clarify the way we're doing things, we have to kind of make sense of all of the chaos and recruiting all these people. So we are interested in really building out our capabilities in the sense of setting up time zone teams. So we're looking at recruiting people, and this is just for the ESOT, this is just for the Emergency Shelter Operations team, where we would take all of the 4 teams per time zone and have them numbered 1 through 4. And we would recruit enough personnel to fit into each one of those time zone teams. And they'd be divided into Eastern, Central, Mountain, and Pacific. I know there's more time zones. We're not looking at those additional time zones. We would also have an additional time zone called Island Time. I know everybody wants to be part of that time zone, to be for the people who have much more flexibility in their schedule. They might be able to deploy for longer than the 14-day requirement, or they might be able to deploy a lot more often during the year than our month rotations. So our idea is that we're going to develop an on-call rotational schedule for the team so that the team members know when they're going to be on call so that they can make the proper arrangements for their lives and their families to make sure that they know that for that month period they're on call. And we'll walk through exactly what that looks like. The time zone teams, if you're on a time zone team, then that means that you are on call for any disaster that happens nationwide. Okay, so if you're on the Pacific team and there's something that happens in Florida and you're on call, then we're going to send you there. So that's basically the construct of it. If you are not available to respond to a 14-day deployment, you still can deploy with us, but you're going to be focused more on a regional or a localized disaster. So you're not going to be sent out to a disaster nationwide. You're going to be focused more at the local or regional level. And then the island team folks, you're going to be deployed wherever there's gaps. So if we know that we need more logisticians out on a particular disaster, then we're going to pull from the island team. If we need additional animal care people, we'll pull from the island team. So that's basically, in essence, what it looks like. We're always going to recruit and train extra people so that we can manage unavailability and attrition. We know that life happens. We know that people who might be on call may not be able to go. They might not feel well. They might have another engagement with work or whatnot. So we're building that into the process. And the idea is that it looks like, well, obviously you guys know what a map looks like, but the idea is that an on-call rotation looks like this. So for January, when we get to this point, there's going to be 4 ESOTs per time zone, and there's going to be 4 time zone teams on call every month. So we've got one from each. So the team ones from each time zone are going to be on call 1 month at a time. And that way, each team gets to be on call 3 times out of the year. So it's not too much of a heavy lift where you're on call more than 5 times, 5 months out of the year. You're only on call 3 months out of the year. And again, there's flexibility there. So if you're not able to do that, that's fine. There's no saying that a disaster is going to happen exactly when you're on call. So this is what it would look like for a 45-day Best Friends deployment. The first 2 teams would deploy. So let's say something happens in June, right? So you've got Eastern time zone team 2, Central team 2, Mountain team 2, and Pacific team 2. So Eastern team 2 and Central team 2 would deploy for days 1 through 14, okay? By day 10, we're gonna send out Mountain team 2 and Pacific team 2 so that there's some overlap between the teams before the first rotation of teams go back. By day 20, we're gonna do the same with the next 2 teams that are on call so that there's, again, that overlap and there's that ability to share any information that's needed. And any gaps, again, will be filled by the ESOT, the island time zone. And that would kind of basically help us fill any sort of necessary items that we need. For this year, because we haven't reached our 4 ESOTs per time zone, we're sorely lacking in the ability to reach this type of time zone model or this on-call model. So for this year, and we're going to strive when our virtual training is available to really get us close to that 4 ESOTs per time zone. For this year, we're going to have just a general pool of people, and if something were to happen, we'd pull together a team just based out of all the people who've trained already with us and all the people who can take the training between now and when we deploy. So does anyone, if anyone has any questions about it, please post it on the chat and we will definitely get back to you guys at the end of our presentation. So in essence, this is what our on-call rotation will look like. Again, just to clarify, if you're on a time zone team, you're going to deploy to a national disaster. That's not a local disaster. If you're on ESOT, Eastern ESOT, you're not deploying just in the Eastern region. You'll deploy anywhere where there is a potential for a disaster. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if this is the 2021 monthly rotation, then 2022 is going to look different because we want to be able to rotate the teams so that not everybody is on call for the same months year after year, because that doesn't build the capacity and the expertise that we know, especially if hurricane season is June through November. So we want to make sure that everybody has that ability to be on call when there's a potential for deployment. And then the strategy for our training. So as I mentioned, we had to cancel a lot of our in-person ESOTs, and we're really shifting to a virtual model now. We're doing our ESOT training for that will be released, we're hoping, in August 2020. It's kind of different than if you took it in person. We're really trying to capture a lot of the interaction that we've had in person, and it's been kind of a successful interaction, and we're trying to put it in an online training, which is a little bit difficult. But we're hoping, we have a couple of people who are on here who are reviewing the training right now for us, and we appreciate you guys for doing that and giving us some critical feedback so we can make this the type of training that will really give you the information that you need. And if you took ESOT already, you don't have to take this virtual training again. But the way that we're also developing it is in different modules, so that some of the modules can be parceled out and become foundation training for other teams. So we have a disaster preparedness module that's built into the ESOT now. And then we're also going to have an animal behavior and care module, which will be available to anyone who wants to take it, as well as a cleaning protocols module that will also be available to anyone who wants to take it. We're also looking at shelter leadership training, and the shelter leadership, a lot of folks have indicated that they're interested in that position. We're also heavily relying on a lot of Best Friends staff to fill leadership positions and activity lead positions. So that is hopefully to come by the end of the year, as well as the disease prevention and outbreak team training, the transportation and coordination training, and the reunification intake and information team training. So, and then ASAR, as I mentioned earlier, we're also gonna continue to, we're looking at building out some modules to help build some expectation training and what they should, what they're getting into, basically, because ASAR is a very different beast than running a shelter operation.
And we're really striving to make it much more interactive and fun than FEMA classes. Trust us, guys.
Yes, thank you for adding that.
Much better than FEMA classes, so don't get nervous.
Yes, thank you for adding that. We are definitely looking at a non-FEMA model. Some of you might be hurricane buffs. Some of you might, thank you, David, it gives us the hands, clapping hands. Some of you might live in hurricane-prone states. Unfortunately, this is looking like it's going to be a pretty brutal hurricane season for us. The average hurricane season produces 12 storms. 6 of them are named and 3 of them are major. So you see what our 2020 outlook is. We're going to have 13 to 19 named storms. 6 to 10 of them are going to become hurricanes, and 3 to 6 of them are going to be major. So the likelihood of us having a very busy hurricane season is pretty high. With that said, the likelihood of us deploying for hurricane season is pretty low. And I'll be very honest, again, the reality for us right now is making sure that people are safe and that we're not adding to transmission rates across the country. However, with that said, we are looking at, and we have some really good minds on this, public health brains on this, putting together a shelter light version of running an animal shelter in the age of COVID-19. So we are looking at what a potential shelter would look like as it relates to the type of facility we would use and having more ventilation, the ratio of pets to people or people to animals or people to people that need to be involved in the daily care of animals and running that shelter operation. The type of equipment that we would need that would add to the PPE and all of that would be required. So we are looking at having some kind of SOP or standard operating procedure together in the event that there is a disaster that hits an area that we simply cannot say no to because it really is an area that has a deep need of moving animals to safety. So I'm not going to say that it's absolutely not going to happen. We are putting our things in order just to make sure that if it does happen, we're ready. And if we get approval from senior leadership that this is something that we can do, then we will put together a training, a specific training just on this. And a lot of that training is just going to remind people what sheltering in a time of pandemic means: masks at all times, washing hands at all times, minimizing contact with one another and whatnot. So again, it's a crapshoot. We don't know if we're going to be able to deploy. We're definitely going to push for it if the need is great and there's an opportunity for us. We're also really looking at partnering with other disaster organizations to see if we can help support them in some ways. Obviously, this will be past COVID-19, and help address some of their gaps and some of our gaps, and making some of that inner relationship workings happen. There's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of need out there. We definitely can fit a need. And if you look at even the American Red Cross model right now, they're going to be doing human sheltering in a very different way this year because of COVID-19. So we're kind of looking at what other people are doing and seeing how it could relate to what we could potentially do during this hurricane season. So more to come on that. As soon as the SOP is done and approved, we'll make sure that if the training is ready, we'll send out an email to everybody. And what a shelter light ESOT would look like is, maybe half of what we would potentially do for a typical ESOT. So the ESOT, that 32 number, was up until staff support. And then when you add in all of the specialized teams that would be deployed, you'd get upwards of 50 people out there helping to support a shelter operation. A shelter light operation would look very drastically different than that, which also means that we would potentially be supporting less animals because we don't have that staffing capability that we would have on a typical disaster. So that's what it looks like. And, we're continuing to really push the needle forward and move our program and enhance our program capabilities. And, we appreciate a lot of your patience. I know this was a meeting that was a long time coming, and we promise that we're going to be more engaging now that things have started to slow down and waned. We are, as soon as we get those training modules up and running, we'll be able to turn them out and have more interaction with you. And our goal is to have quarterly interaction with you if we can. So we really appreciate you guys. I'm going to pass it off to Carrie and Christina, who are going to walk you through the Best Friends portal, the Digital Cheetah portal. So, sorry, the volunteer portal.
All right, hi guys. I'm going to share my screen with you all. All right, nod yes if you can see it. Cool. All right, so this is our online volunteer portal. So this is where you can go to get a lot of your information. And for all the Best Friends staff that are on this call, we have asked most of you, if you've indicated that you're interested in joining ESOT, to go ahead and create a profile on the same portal. So if you haven't already, you can expect to hear from us soon. We'll be asking you to do that. So this is where we're going to be pushing out a lot of information, as well as having resources linked. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things that can be a little bit confusing, especially for our volunteers and staff that are involved in other volunteer programs at our life-saving centers. So if you volunteer at any of our other life-saving centers or programs in other communities, as well as the sanctuary, you might have access to different programs. So the first thing that you're going to want to do to be able to access anything related to emergency response is to go up and make sure that it is selected on national, because that's where our emergency program lives. So if it says something besides national, you're just gonna click on the drop down to change it to national. And then from there, I wanted to show you guys a couple of new pages that we've created. So first of all, we have just a general emergency response volunteer program page. And this has all the details of the different steps that you need to take to join ESOT. So many of you that are on this call that have already completed the ESOT training have already completed all these steps, but for anyone who's new or still going through the process, this is where you can track, your progress. So we have everything mentioned and included here. Everything is hyperlinked to where you need to go, and we even have a printable checklist if you really want to make sure that you stay on track. And then we have information that will continue to update as we start recruitment for any of the other teams that Sharon mentioned. So, so everyone on this call will have access to this page. And again, that lives under this tab that says volunteer and foster info. And then everyone will also have access to this other page labeled emergency planning for you. And that's where we've linked to some different articles and resources related to emergency preparedness. And then these next two pages that I'm going to go over, we have only given access to our ESOT members that have gone through the training and completed all their prerequisites. So if you haven't done that yet, you won't have access to these pages. Once you do complete those things, so we will give you access. So the first one is the next step. So once you complete the ESOT training, some follow-up after that we'll ask from you. And if you completed the training, you've already received an email with these next steps, and we'll continue to communicate that way, but this is just another place for it to live. If you lost track of that email or want to just revisit it and make sure you've finished everything. And so the first step that we ask after you complete ESOT training is letting us know what your position preferences are within the team. And we've hyperlinked here to a folder that includes all those positions as well as their descriptions. And we've listed our email address too. We've also linked to the Emergency Response Volunteer Facebook group, which is private. And we're, again, only giving people access to that Facebook group once you've completed the training. And then we also linked to a checklist of additional training FEMA certifications that we ask you to complete within the first year of being an ESOT member. So that's mentioned there. And then the last page, again, that only active ESOT members can access is a list of all the training, both required and optional. And so we now have the ability to store everyone's FEMA certifications within your volunteer profile, which will be really helpful for us, so we don't have to store that separately. And it will be helpful for you guys because you'll be able to access it later as well. But you can really help us out by uploading those certifications yourself. And so this page has the list of all the different training certifications, as well as a link to each individual one to upload the certification within your profile. So as you're completing these, you would come to this page and click on these hyperlinks to then upload your certification. So if you've already emailed us your FEMA certs, some people we've been trying to keep up and upload, but we are asking that if you still have those, if you could go ahead and upload them for us. And then going forward, if you get any new ones, if you could just plan on uploading them yourselves. For any additional training that you're doing that's not listed here, we don't have a place to store it yet. So we would just ask that you hold on to them, and then we're continuing to work with our volunteer management software to have some other capabilities for that. All right, so the last thing on the volunteer management site that I wanted to show you is how to view your position preferences. So once you've completed the training and you've let us know what positions within a team you would like to fill. We're going in and manually updating your volunteer profile to include those. So if you ever want to check, if you can't remember what you signed up to do, you can look at that yourself by going to the profile tab and then scrolling down to organization info. And under positions, it's going to list all the positions that you've ever filled with Best Friends. So it lists the first 5. If you've filled more than that, then you're going to have to click to view all. But then you'll be able to see all the different positions that you have either filled previously or currently filling. So this is a good place for you to also see what time zone you're signed up for. So which of the ESOT time zones, as well as those individual positions within the team. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing and go back to the PowerPoint. I'll let Sharon share that. All right, so just a couple of reminders for you guys. So again, please submit your FEMA certifications if you haven't already done that. If you could do that through the volunteer portal, that would be really helpful for us. And then if you've completed your ESOT training and haven't emailed us your position preferences, we're asking that you do that. We're gonna probably starting next week, we're really gonna be diving into all of our teams and each individual volunteer and making sure that we have all that information from you guys. So you might be getting emails from us soon where we might either be clarifying those things or we're looking at readjusting some of the positions as well. So we might be notifying you of some changes. And so you can expect that. And then again, utilize the volunteer portal for all those other resources. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, some of you may have experienced this a few months ago. We had a very unfortunate security glitch with the emergency response wall email address. Our security is really, really good, and it was too good. It was actually preventing a lot of emails coming in from you all, so we weren't receiving a lot of emails, and we weren't aware of it until it had been happening for a few weeks. So I just wanted to let everyone know that we immediately spoke with IT, and it took a couple of weeks to figure out what the glitch was, but that has been resolved, and we continuously keep an eye on that to make sure it doesn't happen again. But just know that both myself and Christina were extremely responsive, and if you don't hear from us within like 24 to 72 hours, that's abnormal. So definitely email us again if that ever happens. But like I said, we're pretty hopeful that it's been fixed and that will never happen again. But I did want to apologize about that. So our email address is listed here. So if you have any questions about anything I talked about, feel free to reach out. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Carrie. Really appreciate that. And thanks, Christina, for sharing the links. So again, just emergency response vol is Christina and Carrie's email that you can reach them, and emergency response is Meg and I. So just that sort of delineation. And I just wanted to plug, there's so many different avenues to reach you guys. And so I just wanted to remind folks that if you have a Facebook account, there is an ER team that we have, an ER group in Facebook, and that is for people who have completed all of the required trainings. And if you're an employee, we have a ER group on Workplace, so make sure that you're a part of that as well. And I know that not everybody has social media, so we will continue to email you through the normal channels, really heavily leaning on Digital Cheetah to communicate with you guys as well. And I think, unfortunately, I realized that because we had to log off the first time, if you actually put in a question during the first chat or first session, we probably lost that. So if you don't mind re-putting in any questions that you might have up until this point, but we do have 10 minutes, and I know we were over our time, but because we had to log off and log on, I'm hoping some of you can still stay with us, and we really appreciate that. So Carrie, did you want to share your screen for the questions, or are we just going to kind of go through some of the pre-loaded questions that people gave us?
I can go ahead and just, yeah, I can share my screen.
Or if you just want to read them, read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the first question is, if a disaster were to happen during a pandemic / stay-at-home order, would we still be deployed to help out?
Okay. Well, I think we answered that. It's a great question. And I think I mentioned that we're working on the SOP. So hopefully that SOP will enable us to be able to deploy this year or next year, however long this pandemic takes place. So we don't want to miss an opportunity to save lives. So, but we have to do it in a safe and smart way. So hopefully we'll, it's still kind of up in the air for that. So I know that's not an exact answer, but it's the closest one I got.
And then the next question, will you be getting a VOAD, which stands for Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster membership for Best Friends?
I love that someone knows what VOAD is. We are very closely linked to a lot of the organizations that are VOAD members. Voluntary Organizations Active in a Disaster is a nonprofit that basically focuses on organizations that have a volunteer arm that can help out in a variety of different areas in a disaster. There's a membership fee to join. Right now, we're not talking about joining, but we are participating in a lot of those calls. We are participating in a lot of the national conferences. Actually, I was due to go this year to their national conference that ended up being canceled. So although right now we're not going to join the organization, that might change in the future, but just know that we are in touch with a lot of those organizations anyway without having to be a member. So we're already collaborating with a lot of those organizations, but great question.
Next one, is there cooperation with other animal organizations on deployment?
Yes, there is cooperation, but there's definitely room for improvement. You know, everyone kind of has their own scope and everyone's working within their scope. But I think COVID-19 has kind of helped us be more aligned in the bigger, broader effort to help people and their pets. But, you know, I think we can definitely do better, continuously have room for improvement. I think we can definitely do better as an organization. During a disaster, there is a group that touches base on a national level that we have a seat at the table. And it's just for collaborating purposes, sharing information. And I think that that's a step in the right direction.
Can we get an update on reimbursement of travel expenses?
Yeah, great question too. So we're still kind of in the same position. This is kind of going to be a game day decision. We're still seeking that long-term funding that can help with the travel expenses for the volunteers. I think that we're kind of pushing the cart before the horse though, because we kind of have to prove ourselves in the field before we can go after that funding. So, you know, maybe those donors will pop up when they see what we're capable of and what we can do on the ground, you know, even past Harvey with a larger capacity. We have a lot of internal conversations about how we can best support our teams. Again, we appreciate and understand the difficulties in being able to pay your own way. We are looking at ways that we can help offset some of those costs, like lodging, car rentals, meals. And that is likely going to happen because we do have some corporate relationships there that we can lean on. But as far as like the travel vouchers and stuff, that's still something that we're exploring and that we're hoping that we can get covered at some point in the near future. We're also looking at alternative ways to get our teams on the ground, i.e. Being able to really have a relationship with other disaster organizations that can pay our way if we're kind of bridging the gap on the pet sheltering front. So more to come on that. Hopefully it all works out, but we really appreciate you guys. And as soon as we do have an update on that, we'll be sharing that update with you all.
I have the list of optional training recommendations from FEMA and the ASPCA. Are there other training resources or suggestions for animal handling information, especially?
Cats, yes. Yeah, we actually, Meg, you want to take this one? We're currently working on an animal handling training that's a little bit more detailed and has a lot more cat info. So Meg, do you want to?
Yeah, we're going to put together an animal behavior and handling module. We're in the process of doing that now. And we actually have somebody working in Cat World who's helping with the cat behavior part. So we'll be very immersed in our feline behavior. But yes, that should be coming out soon, hopefully too. And it will include dog and cat safety, behavior, and handling. So
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna skip the one asking about any in-person training schedules because I think you covered that. So the next one, will any of our training focus on fire response?
So fire response, meaning would we go into a wildfire disaster scenario? The likelihood is if there are animals that are in need and it matches our criteria and we can't find any sort of local support to help address those needs, then yeah, there might be some elements of us being involved in it. If you're talking about actual fire response, that's probably not something we're looking to get involved in. There's a lot of certifications that are needed for that, and we're definitely not equipped or interested in getting involved in that aspect.
Does Best Friends Emergency Response Team maintain stores of PPE? Is there a plan in place to dispatch it to places needed?
PPE, yeah, so personal protective equipment, we don't keep it in storage in large quantities. We have some for our sanctuary staff. I believe some of the life-saving centers have some for their staff, if I'm not mistaken on that. We don't have large quantities in store. We did not want to be part of the problem with our healthcare workers not having access to it. So we didn't go in and buy hordes of them, but now that there are manufacturers that are making more, and actually Best Friends has some Best Friends branded face masks that are available at the store, shameless plug. So if you're interested in that, you can go on there. I think they're $10 each, but they're really cute. You could actually, we're actually looking at including some additional PPE in our deployment kits, but they're definitely not going to be enough for everybody. We're not going to be able to cover that need. So if we do deploy, we do expect you to have at least your own face mask, or as part of your your own go bag, your own emergency go bag. But we will have some on hand just in case we need it. Any other questions?
So there's 3 more. I'm just gonna skip to the short.
Can I just interrupt? We have less than a minute remaining on this version, so we might have to take these questions and complete them online when we send out the recording. So we can take these questions if you guys want to just, Christina or Carrie, if you want to just copy and paste these questions, that would be great. And that way we could answer it online when we send out the email to everybody with the recorded versions. But less than a minute, I just wanted to say thank you so much, everybody. We really appreciate you guys. We appreciate you joining us today. I really hope that you take this opportunity to prepare yourselves for anything that comes, any disasters that impact your area. My whole motto is if you fail to plan, then